Hello and welcome to the BYU Library Family History webinar. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Olivia Tuller and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You are welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is not until January 11th due to Christmas break. And that will be with Catherine Grant. She will be presenting on Down Memory Lane using the Memories tab on the Family Tree Person page. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Maureen Brady, who will be giving a presentation on British resources at Findmypast. Before we begin, here's a little bit about Maureen. Maureen Brady, a former school librarian and computer educator, has 40 years experience with family history research. She has traced her Scottish roots back to the end of the 17th century and beyond, and has also pursued Chicago in the Midwest, the Trans-Allegheny US, Quebec, Irish, and Swedish research. Maureen has made numerous presentations to genealogical societies, libraries, conferences, and workshops throughout the U.S., as well as presenting for the Brigham Young University Library Family History webinar series. She is a member of the Genealogical Speakers Guild, as well as a life member of the Aberdeen and Northeast Scotland Family History Society and the Ohio, Chicago, and McHenry County, Illinois Genealogical Societies. She is also active in the Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, and Lake County, Illinois Genealogical Societies, the British Interest Group of Wisconsin and Illinois, and the Chicago Scotch Genealogical Group. And we'll now turn the time over to Maureen if she's ready.
So we're going to talk about the British resources at Findmypast. Originally, Findmypast was almost exclusively only British resources, but they have expanded to worldwide collections now, particularly the United States and Canada. So tonight, however, we are just going to look at their British resources. And first question is then, what are the British Isles? I belong to a British interest group here in Illinois and Wisconsin, and we often have this discussion when we're talking about topics and titles of topics. Well, for our definition tonight, the British Isles are one kingdom, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but they are separated or actually culturally divided by 6 different groups of people. So we have the Scotland or the Scots, Irish, and I'm including the entire island of Ireland at this point because until 1922, that was a single entity and was controlled by England. The Isle of Man in the Irish Sea, England, Wales, and the Channel Islands off the coast of France. So we have 6 different groups that created records in different ways at different times. For instance, England began civil registration in 1837. However, Scotland did not start until 1855, is just one example. So you're going to find different forms of records at different times. There is no one commonality to any of this. Findmypast has records from England, Wales, Ireland, the Isle of Man, and the Channel Islands, but it does not include records, mostly records from Scotland, except military records of Scottish regiments and some census. Scottish records are available on Scotland's People, scotlandspeople.gov.uk, and pre-20th century records for Scotland can also be found on Family Search. They have quite an extensive collection. So if you're looking for Scotland, Findmypast is not the place to start unless you need military records. To just quickly tell you the cost to Findmypast, there's 3 different levels of membership. The Essential, British, or Irish. You can use it as a monthly automatic renewal or a 3-month or a year all at once. And that includes the English and Wales parish registers, the English, Wales, and Ireland census records, the Catholic parish records primarily of England, but also Ireland, and then travel and migration records from and to the British Isles. The ultimate British and Irish subscription goes up to $29.99 a month, or you can see the other prices. And now it adds the Griffiths Valuation of Ireland, the English and Wales Parish Registers, the 1939 Register of England and Wales, British newspapers, and military records. All are under the ultimate British and Irish subscription. The most expensive one is the $300 a year approximately premium subscription, but that one includes access to the 1921 census of England and Wales and complete unlimited access to the newspaper collection. The ultimate collection or the ultimate subscription only gives you limited access. So just so you can decide which one might best use what you need, you should look at each of these and what's available under each. However, there's also a way to at least get the essential by going to a family search center, because the family search centers offers free access to the essential British and Irish collection. And many public libraries as well has that same collection as one of theirs that they offer to their patrons. So you would always want to check to see if your public library has one, or if you have a family search center close to you where you can access Find My Past at that limited collection level for free. Find My Past also has records for Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, but these are accessible only through the premium subscription or at family search centers and many libraries. So you would again need to consider what you need to be accessing as to what level of subscription you need to pay for. You will be able to make more targeted searches on Find My Past if you have first searched Family Search and Ancestry. Find My Past is a difficult search engine to maneuver through and navigate through, so it's best to have a lot of your information ahead of time, at least the pertinent dates and places. That makes it easier. So you go to Family Search and Ancestry, you use their search options, which are easier to navigate, and they both have extensive British records that have been indexed and digitized. So you start with Family Search and Ancestry and get some information from those two sources before you try looking for anything on Find My Past. That's all kind of a background to what you need to know to decide if this is going to be a good choice for your research or not. So here's the home page after you have signed in, and it has some links at the top up here. It also has a search engine, a search box here. This is very generalized. It defaults to where you're living. So since I'm in the United States, it defaults to United States and Canada, but just click on this drop-down arrow and you can change it to other parts of the world. This is a very general search. And just to show you how general this is, I'm going to look for my great-great-great-great-grandfather, fourth greats. He was born in 1776, somewhere in the British Isles, but I'm not sure where. So I chose Britain rather than trying to narrow it down to a particular country, because I really do not know. Well, with just those parameters, you'll note there are over 19,000 matches to a William Hunter born in 1776 plus or minus 2 somewhere in Britain. That's going to be too many to go through, I would think, for most of us. So if you go back to the advanced search, you now get this broader search window. You also get some ways to narrow down the type of record you're looking for over here on the left. And it still tells me 1933-37, and that's because I haven't narrowed anything nor added any additional information. But if I were to stick with that 19,000, you can see it gives me people born 1775 to 1778. It gives me the record set, that is the index name over here. And then it tells me that something occurred in this area. Here's Dumfries, here's Kilbarton, here's Renfrew, and so on. We do get down to England and so on from there. But there's not enough detail here for you to tell if any of these are who you're looking for. So you literally have to open up each one and analyze them one at a time to determine if it is the person you're looking for or the record you need. This is why I'm saying this is very difficult to navigate through to get to the records you really want. So the other thing then is to come back to this advanced search window. And now I still have his name in 1776. And now it's changed to United Kingdom instead of Britain. Don't ask me why they use two different terms. And I'm going to look only for census records because I've chosen just the word census. And I have 55 results. So now that's going to be a little bit easier for me to navigate through. It still only gives me a year of approximate birth. It tells me this is all 1841. There is English. There's also going to be Scottish in here. If you look over here, we've got 2 in Aberdeenshire and so on. But unless you've done previous research to at least know where he might have lived in the 1841 period, you're going to have to look at each one of these to see who he's living with, what his age is here, but maybe there's a wife listed, so you can say, well, that's not the right person, but you'd still have to go through 55 potential locations for him if he is alive in 1841. So it's slow. It is somewhat tedious and laborious, but you can get some really great finds taking the time to do this. Coming back now to my home page. Now this is that general search window over here, but there's another way to do it and actually is more efficient. If you come up to this search bar here, and some of these main screens are in your handout. There's about 6 of these main screens that I've included. So if I use search, it's going to then take me to this window. I chose search, and now I have some options here. I can now narrow down just to a particular type of record. I can search every record, and essentially that's what I just did. Or I can take a look at all of the databases that Findmypast has. So let's do that. And you now see there are 2,723 different databases, and you notice it says the world here because now it defaults to everything on the website. But by changing this, I can now do Britain, and now I'm down to 1,036, and this screen is in your handout. So now I know that I'm at least dealing with just the British Isles, and I still have over 1,000 different databases. You can see the different topics. You can see the number of records in each database, which some of these, and here's 157 million in the England and Wales electoral registers for a period of time in the 20th century. And you would have to go through these and scroll down and choose which ones seemed most appropriate for your research. And then you would have to work your way through each one of them. There is no easy way to get to a specific database other than through this method. If I go to Other Britain and Ireland to include Irish records as well as Isle of Man and Channel Islands, now I'm down to 89, and you'll see most of these say England and Wales, but we do have outward movement to Australia. We have the government probate death index down here. We have the British Army service records. We have crime, prisons, and punishment. So it does pull in some additional types of records, some additional types of databases. Yes, these are all going to be listed in that 1,000 plus, but now I've narrowed it down to a region within the British Isles, and now I can see what's available for that region. I can also limit it by years if I choose to, or by counties or cities. So let's take a look at, let's do some actual searches. I think it's the best way here to show you how this works in Findmypast and the type of records that are available. So one of my third great grandfather was a William Hunter. He was born according to the censuses that are very consistent around 1817 in Downpatrick, Ireland. And this points out why I say do your research at Family Search and Ancestry first, because that's where I narrowed this down. He died in 1881 in Dundee, Scotland, and his death certificate said his father was William Hunter, a soldier, and his mother was Sarah Johnston. And she was deceased, both deceased by the time he died. Then if I look at Sarah Johnston, she is in her death certificate, she's the widow of William Hunter, but now we get the additional information where here it just says soldier. On her death certificate, we now learn he's a private in the 92nd Regiment of Foot. And this now will lead me to military records at the least. So I come back to the general research, and I'm looking for that William Hunter, born in 1817, plus or minus 2, in Downpatrick. And I've picked birth, marriage, and death, and you notice I only have 2 results. So I click on that. One of them is in Downpatrick, and one is in County Down. This is a probate death index from 1898, and I know that my William died in 1881, so we know this is not the correct person. But here we have someone born in 1817. He's in Downpatrick. This is worth looking at, and you see the 2 little icons here. One is for the more all of the index information that's available, the transcription of that, and this is the actual image. And when I do that, here's the image. It tells me it's Army births and baptisms. This is page 1535. These are the column headings. And if you come down here, here's William Hunter. Hunter is up at the top. In Downpatrick in 1817. His father is in the 92nd Regiment of Foot, which agrees with his mother's death certificate. And it can be found on volume 158, page 2 of the chaplain records. That's what this is actually representing. Now, this is only an index. So my next step for this would be to contact the Public Record Office in England, which is where all the military records are held, and I would have to request these records to be pulled and sent to me at some cost. It would depend on how big the file is. But at least I now have some proof that he was born in Downpatrick in 1817. So this is so far my only birth record that I have of him that is of some official capacity. Now, if I go on, and now I'm going to go to the military service for his father. Well, based on his birth and some other information I was able to determine, William Hunter is born around 1776. He is dead at least from 1845 to 1855 because he's not in the civil registration death records, and he receives a medal for his service in the Napoleonic Wars in 1847. So I know that he's alive in 47 because that was the requirement. So I gave it a 5-year either side for his death. I do not know again where he was born or died. I know where his children are, some of his children and his wife, but I do not know where he is. And now I'm picking military service. So you see there's only 7 down here giving all of this information. So I'll click on that. I can try adding regiment, but one of the peculiarities of Findmypast is though it tells you regimental numbers, it doesn't do it in a consistent way. Sometimes it'll just say 92. Sometimes it'll say 92 written out. Sometimes it will say 92nd. And so you don't really know what your particular record might have. So I most of the time do not put anything in this regiment box because most of the time that means I get 0 results down here. That's just an aside. You can always try it. So here's the 7, and we have a William Hunter in County Derry, another one in County Derry, one in Londonderry. Here's one in Down, and then 3 that are just generic Great Britain. And again, I can come over and look at the full index, or I can look at the image. Well, when I look at the image for this one in Down, Ireland, which was where his son was born, I get this index page. He find out that he was 53 when he entered the Army or was discharged. It says attestation, but most of the time this means discharge. and it tells me it's a Chelsea pensioner's British Army service record. Well, even though it's down, and I'm not sure of an age, I discount this because Sarah's death certificate says he was a private in the 92nd. Typically, if the husband had been a Chelsea pensioner, that would have been the occupation listed for the widow's husband in her death record. So I'm pretty sure he was not a Chelsea pensioner because it never said that on any record, either for him, for his wife or his children. So I'm going to pass this one up. Here's two others from that list, and you notice that this one is from the 2nd Royal Veteran Battalion. So he's the 92nd Regiment of Foot. If we look at this one, it's the 75th Foot. So it's not the correct William, but you can see here, it actually caught William as an abbreviation. So it has a good search for the names, especially the given names, unless you tell it exact, which I rarely do. So let's go back to this, and we're going to go back and look again at military service, but now we're going to look down here and see if there might be a category that I could choose that might be more useful. If I just stick with military, I have 521 to look through. But if I come down and choose one of the others, such as medal rolls and honors, I only get 8. So you see how this works. You have to start with the broader search and then continue to narrow it down with whatever you can enter in or choose as a subcategory to try to get to a smaller number that you can look through. So here's 8. And now it leads me to the Peninsular Medal Roll from 1793 to 1814. This is during the Napoleonic Wars. And down here, we see a William Hunter. He has 2 clasps on his medal, and it represents VITT 5. Well, I had to do some research on Google, but I found out that VITT stands for the Battle of Vittoria, Spain, on the 21st of June, 1813. And at the top of the page, it clearly tells me this is 92nd Regiment of Foot. So I have the right regiment. I have the right name. You can see there's only one William. There's an Alexander and a George who may or may not be related. And he served at the Battle of Vittoria, Spain in 1813, and he received 2 clasps. I've yet to determine how you get a certain number of clasps. So, for instance, George has 7. Why does he have 7 and William only has 2? I haven't quite determined that, but there is some difference. Then it's another example of what I found in those military records. I'm not going to walk you through how I did it. You see the way to do it. You start with a broad search and continue to narrow it down with more filtering or more additional information. So this is from the database for the British Army pensioners at Royal Hospital, Kilmainham, Ireland. Now, this does not mean they were pensioners, but because it's the Royal Hospital, such as the one Chelsea in London, it comes under the pensioner records, and that's why it's in this database. And you see it goes 1783 to 1822. Well, this one is the best. This was my absolute find. So up here, 92nd Regiment of Foot, you see it's spelled out on this record, not with numerical entry. And we have a lieutenant general who also was an earl, who's the head of this hospital. And it says this is to certify that private, right rank, William Hunter, born in the parish of Skene, in or near the town of Aberdeen, in the county of Aberdeen. And Aberdeen is where his wife ended up. It's where his 2 daughters and son that I have been able to identify ended up. So William was enlisted for the aforesaid regiment, that is the 92nd, in Galway, in the county of Galway, which is in Ireland, on the 5th day of August, 1806, at the age of 30 years for unlimited service. So in 1806, he's 30 years old, which goes to that 1776 birth. If you look down here, it says that before he was in the 92nd Regiment, he was part of the Aberdeen Fencibles. So again, a tie to the Aberdeenshire area. and he was in that from 1795 to 1803 for a period of 8 years. Then there's a gap of 3 years, and then he joins the 92nd Regiment. And there's also a note here that he served at Waterloo. So in addition to that battle in Spain, he was also at the Battle of Waterloo. And I also know that because they received a medal later on, I won't show you that, but there was another medal notation that he received the Waterloo Medal, which wasn't granted until 1847, and you had to be alive to apply for it. So that leads me to that I now know he lived to at least 1847. Now, continuing on with this document, and not only gives me that information, it also tells me, here's the larger section of that. Skiing was important, and I'll show you why in a minute, why I'm fairly certain this is the right person. It goes on to tell me down here that his general conduct as a soldier has been good, and that he was wounded in the right leg at the Battle of Randallstown, Ireland in June 1798. Well, at this point, I'm going, where's Randallstown, Ireland? So I had to do some research there again. And again, Google helped me to find out what was involved with this one-day skirmish in this town of Randallstown, but he apparently was wounded during that skirmish. Here's a blow up of that to make it a little easier to see. And then finally, to prevent any improper use of this discharge, they give a full physical description. So on the date of the discharge, which is 1817, he is about 42 years of age, 5 feet 8 inches in height, has black hair, hazel eyes, sallow complexion, and by trade or occupation was a laborer. So I now have a physical description from a time frame before photography. So this is a good plus to my research. And it also gave me something that also kind of supported I have the right private hunter. My mother had black hair, hazel eyes, and a sallow complexion, and she was the only one in her family with those 3 characteristics. It came down from her 4th great-grandfather, but apparently the genes were still pretty strong. So that's his discharge paper from the hospital when it was determined that he was no longer physically able to serve, and so he got a medical discharge based on that wound in 1798. Now, the reason why I think it's skiing, or skiing is important, is that in 1803, A. William Hunter and a Sarah Johnston, now remember that's the name of his wife, they had a son baptized also named William, and it was recorded that that took place in Ireland. So this William is in Ireland, but his son's baptism is being recorded in a parish in Aberdeen, Scotland. So I take this skiing clue and tie it together with that discharge paper, and I'm fairly certain I have the right William Hunter. But you see how you have to go back and forth with this, and this information I actually found at Family Search. Now, I give you some other examples. We won't go through the search, but in the census land and land substitutes, here's some of the 43 databases that are available. You can see Westminster Roman Catholic Census of 1893. We have a Liverpool census from 1901. So there's quite a variety, even the Isle of Gibraltar, which isn't, I guess it's a peninsula, but Gibraltar census from 71 to 21, that's even included here. So you have quite a variety of possibilities, and you can take a look at each one. They each have their own search window that you can enter in your information. And here's an example from the 1939 register. This is from Port Talbot in Glamorganshire, Wales. And we have the Forsyth family here, William and Margaret, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 means that these people are all living in the same household. And here's their birth dates and their occupations and their ages. And the 1939 register was taken in September of 1939, right after Great Britain declared war in Germany. And the purpose of this was to determine and to identify who would be available for military service and for territorial service, that is protecting the islands of Great Britain. And so they did this register, which is essentially an index, a census, but it included everybody no matter what their age was. So you have 1 April said, these are not ages, these are years. So William was born in 75, Margaret in 73, and so on. And it tells you exactly what their occupation was on that date in September of 1939. Since the 1941 census will not be released until 2042, this is a good pre-World War I source to get some information on your family. And this is only available at Findmypast. Under birth, marriage, and death, here's an example, not complete by any means, of some of the registers that are available. You can see the time frame. Here's Chester all the way back to 1538. We have Devon. We have Roman Catholic baptisms here and burials as well. Continuing this, you can continue to go through. Here we have a list of apprentices in Lincolnshire and so on. There's even bastardy cases, which are illegitimate children, and that's over 2,400 in that database just for Lincolnshire. So there's a huge variety of these types of records. There are some Scottish ones, but these are only indexes. You would not get any images here on Findmypast. You would have to go to Scotland's People for that. But here's one example of an index. This is a marriage in 1878 of my great-great-grandfather, James Robertson, married on the 5th of August in Bishop Wearmouth, St. Peter, and this is in Durham. And he's marrying an Ellen Chalmers, which happened to be his third wife. You can see the information here, and I would have to get that record actually today. As far as I know, it's either order it through the English Public Record Office or go out to Salt Lake City, because they do have a microfilm of this particular parish register. Immigration and travel. I'm going to show you this one. This is Oliver Hunter, my uncle, born in 1910, and he immigrated with his mother and brothers in 1913 to the United States from Scotland. Now, when I opened up and did that search, I got 12 results, but the top 3 are someone born in 1910, immigrating in 1913. One is from their British and Irish Roots General Collection, but we have passenger lists leaving the UK. We have the United States-Canadian border crossings. And that is because the ship that they took went first to Montreal, and they got on a train and then took a train to Chicago. So that's why we have the Canadian border crossings. And just to show you what I can get, this is the passenger list from the Praetorian leaving Glasgow on 1 November 1913. And here's my grandmother and her 3 boys, all on ticket 20981 and the ages and so forth. This is them leaving Glasgow in November. And then from the Praetorian, leaving on that date, we have their arrival in November of 1913 in Montreal. It's a US record, however, you can see for the United States, because they had a through ticket on the train directly to the United States. So in Montreal, the United States had an immigration station to process those people who were coming into Montreal, but continuing immediately on to the United States. And you can see there's the beginning of the list, and here's Mary and William and George and Oliver, and it gives all the particulars, and it says that the person left behind is my great-grandfather George, and then it goes on for another whole page. This is the complete passenger list of their arrival, processing through Montreal, but heading into the United States. And then in addition, the border crossing record, which was taken on the train as they crossed at Port Huron. And here's all that information. And then it also has on the back that he entered Port Huron on that date. So I have the date they left Glasgow, the date they got to Montreal, and the date they actually crossed into the United States in Port Huron. So a fairly complete immigration record for that group of my relatives. Now, the last part of this that I want to talk about is newspapers. You go back to this search window where you click on the arrow and then you get this selection, and we've looked at this before, but now you want to come over to search newspapers. It is British newspapers. It is a huge collection, 73 million pages, but take a look at the search window. This is what it looks like when you click there, and you can put in a name and you can put in a keyword, which could be a place or a company or whatever you want. Now, when I do that, let me back up a minute. That's how you search. But if you come down, if you go all the way to the bottom of this screen, now this screen is in your handout, and so is this screen in your handout. At the very bottom, it has this Explore Our Collections, and it has the list of the over 2,000 newspaper titles that they have included on Findmypast. This will change, go up, it will increase. And you can then pick your newspaper by title alphabetically. So it's usually the name of the town or the city that publishes it, and then the name of the paper. And over here, whatever one you've picked, it tells you where it's published, the earliest first issue and the last issue that's on Findmypast, how many issues and how many pages and the years covered and the publisher. And if I click on that, this is how that works. So here's Aberdare at the beginning, but then it goes alphabetically through all of these places. And you can see there's even the African Telegraph and Gold Coast Mirror. So this isn't just in the British Isles. This would also be the broader British Empire. And if looking at Aberdeen, which is where my family's from, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different newspapers that I can search separately, one at a time. I cannot look at them, search them as a group. You have to do each one separately, but you can click on it and then we give you the details of the years covered and so on. If you do a search here, and I just did a William Forsythe. We had 2 generations of William Forsythes living in London, and that's all I could put on this generic window. I get 7,487 matches for all time periods. You can see the differences here, and you can see the different kinds of records. One of them is an author. This is also an author. This is somebody that is also an author, and so on. So the first ones are all the same author, it appears. But again, I'm not going to work myself through 7,487. So the best option is the advanced search here. And then I can tie in some other choices. I can put in a name, but it will treat it not as a phrase. If you want it to be a phrase, such as John Smith, you would have to come down to phrase and then enter it down here. So it treats the 2 names together as a name. If you put it up here, it's going to look for Johns, it's going to look for Smiths, and it's going to look for John Smith. So you're going to get a huge number. You would do it down here. You can also include dates, range of dates if you wish, where they may have lived, that you may have found a newspaper, and so on. So there's some options here to help you tie it down to a much smaller number. And I'm now going to show you some examples. This is the Daily Free Press, Aberdeen, Scotland, 1891. Under the death notices we have here at 130 Holborn Street on the 12th instant, meaning the 12th of November, Rachel M'Intosh, that they use the abbreviation for Mick here, beloved wife of Alexander Forsythe, late of Garysford Fork, and she's loved and deeply mourned. So this is a typical death notice. I have not found very many at all that have anything more than this in the death notices, not like the United States and Canada where they put in survivors and so forth. It is strictly a death notice, and sometimes they will also tell you when the funeral will be, but that is going to be it. Now, there's another one. I don't know why I did that, but here's the Sun from 1842, the Sun of London. And now we have quite an extensive story. It is a death notice of a William Taylor who died at 102 at Old Moss Spivey. But most of this story actually goes back 100 years almost, because he's 102. This goes back about 97 years. And down here, you will see recollected well of the Duke of Cumberland's army marching north, and gave a graphic detail of its arrival in the parish of Fyvie. And it goes on to say that he was out in the field working with his father, that he was in charge of getting the hens to a safe place, the chickens, and that the Duke's cavalry was accommodated in the parish church, and the seats were taken out to make room for the horses, and so on. Quite an interesting little article about William Taylor, who's also one of my great-grandfathers. And it also gives me some historical reference about a period of time which was the last major battle fought in British soil. So it gave me what I was looking for, but it also gave me some background information, and quite important. So that's my looking at Findmypast and some examples of the types of British records you can get. It is cumbersome to use Findmypast. I'm using that word from my own perspective, but it is well worth taking the time to work yourself through the various layers to get to the information you need. And if it doesn't work in one database, try a different database, try a different perspective of what the record might have been, such as that baptismal record was actually in the chaplaincy records at the Public Record Office in Kew. Sometimes you will need to think a little bit outside the box, thinking about, did they stay in Great Britain? Maybe they went to Australia or New Zealand or Canada, and maybe you can find a departure record for that. You have to kind of just think in a broad sense, but then keep narrowing yourself down. And then somebody wanted the handout, and then Olivia just put it up again. It's just 6 screens from the presentation that I thought maybe if you go back through this after it's released on Monday, you could easily make notes on the screen prints as to how you navigate the website. They're always increasing. They're adding a lot of Canadian and US records, as I said, but they keep continuing to add from the British Isles. And so you have to keep going back. Maybe you can't find it this month, but it might be there in 3 months. Difficult to use. I will quite agree with you. They asked me to upload my tree, and I will say that I have not put my tree on Findmypast. I use it simply for me to go and search for records. I don't ask them for any hints, because most of the time they aren't even anything close to what I'm looking for. So yes, it is difficult, but just keep plugging away. The more you use it, the better user you will become. Your tip for using phrase was worth the whole webinar to me. Well, thank you. I keep trying to find a name and it didn't work, as you pointed out. Are any newspapers free on Findmypast? Only if you're on the LDS accounts. Yes, you can access them. You can access them also at the Family Search Centers for free. At home, you'd have to be a subscribed member or with an LDS account. Thank you very much, A. White, for your comment. I appreciate that. It's a fun site because they have so many records that don't typically pop up in our minds when we're thinking about births, baptisms, deaths, burials, marriages. They have some rather unique sets, and you just have to work your way through that list of record sets for the area you're interested in. You can even narrow it down to a particular county or shire, and it will show you the ones that are available only for that area. So you just keep narrowing it down, and eventually you get to something that you really need and can use. Thanks very much from someone else, from Bruce and Dan. Great tip on using Family Search and Ancestry first. Would have saved me a lot of time, yes. Because of the size of the collections, Ancestry strong for England, Wales, and Ireland. Family Search very strong for Scotland, but they also, of course, have records from the other parts of the British Isles as well. that's really where you need to start your research and get and kind of glean everything you can from those two sites before you start looking and Find My Past. And I think you can understand from my presentation why. The more you know that you can put into the filters and put into the narrowing down, the more luck you're going to have finding something. Oh, thank you. Lincolnshire just popped up. I wasn't thinking of it in particular.
All right, thank you so much everyone for joining us today. We hope you will join us for our next webinar, which is on January 11th with Catherine Grant. She will be giving a presentation on Down Memory Lane, using the Memories tab on the Family Tree person page. A recording of this webinar will be made available next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fhl_webinars@byu.edu or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.